What if decades of a quiet struggle, dismissed by a system that refused to see, suddenly found its voice in a chamber where truth could no longer be ignored? What if the profound wisdom born of a long life, combined with an unwavering spirit, proved powerful enough to dismantle an empire of indifference? The scent of honeysuckle still clung to the air in Liberty Grove, just as memories of a vibrant community clung to Esther Mae Johnson. At 72, Esther Mae was the matriarch of her block. Her hands gnarled from a lifetime of tending gardens and raising generations. Her eyes, though softened by age, held the deep, knowing gaze of someone who had seen too much. For years, she had watched her beloved neighborhood, a place rich with Black American history and family ties, slowly choke. The culprit, a subtle, acrid odor that seemed to seep from the ground around the old abandoned manufacturing plant on the edge of town, leaving behind a trail of unexplained illnesses, particularly among the children and the elderly. Her pleas, to City Hall, to local environmental agencies, to the corporate giants who once owned the plant, had always met the same deafening silence. Dismissed as the concerns of an elderly resident, her detailed accounts of strange rashes, chronic coughs, and wilting gardens were filed away, ignored, forgotten. For more gripping tales from the hidden corners of justice and beyond, subscribe to Dark Side of Luna, where the shadows hold the truth. The last straw was young Marcus, her great-grandson, barely 5 years old, struggling for breath, his small chest racked by a persistent cough that no doctor could cure. Esther Mae had personally visited City Councilman Miller's office again, her voice steady despite her trembling hands as she presented yet another petition, signed by dozens of concerned neighbors. Miller, a slick politician with a polished smile, barely looked up from his phone. Mrs. Johnson, we appreciate your civic engagement. Our records indicate air quality is within acceptable limits. These matters are complex. Perhaps you're just overly concerned. Enjoy your retirement. His words were a casual, condescending wave of dismissal, pushing away decades of experience, a lifetime of community knowledge, and a grandmother's desperate plea for her dying great-grandson. Esther Mae felt the familiar sting, the ache of being invisible. She was just an old Black woman from a forgotten neighborhood. Her concerns easily swept under the rug of bureaucracy and corporate influence. But as she walked out of City Hall, her heart heavy, a new fire ignited deep within her. It wasn't the quick, hot rage of youth, but the slow, burning resolve forged over 72 years of enduring, surviving, and quietly fighting for what was right. She remembered her grandmother's words during the civil rights era. They can dim your light, child, but they can't put out your fire. Her light was dim, but her fire was far from out. She had been dismissed for years, but somewhere deep in the legal system, there had to be someone who would listen, someone who saw more than an overly concerned elderly resident. There had to be justice, even if she had to walk every step to find it. Esther Mae knew the path to justice, especially federal justice, would not be easy. Her first attempts to navigate the labyrinthine federal bureaucracy were met with the same polite, yet impenetrable, walls of dismissal. Phone calls to federal environmental agencies went unanswered or were shunted between departments. Letters disappeared into the void of endless paperwork. Each unanswered call, each ignored email, was a fresh prick to her aging heart, reminding her of Councilman Miller's condescending smile, a constant echo of overly concerned. But her great-grandson Marcus's labored breathing fueled a fire no bureaucratic ice could extinguish. One Tuesday morning, while at the community center, poring over outdated environmental pamphlets, a young woman approached her. Aisha Sharma, a sharp, earnest Black American attorney barely out of law school, ran a tiny pro bono clinic dedicated to environmental justice. Aisha had heard whispers of the smell in Liberty Grove and seen the frustration on the faces of community elders. Mrs. Johnson, Aisha began, her voice respectful but firm, I heard about your visits to City Hall. My name is Aisha Sharma. I believe you, and I want to help. Esther Mae, initially wary from years of false promises, looked into Aisha's earnest eyes and saw a reflection of her own youthful idealism, tempered with genuine concern. She opened her heart, detailing the generations of her family in Liberty Grove, the gradual onset of the illnesses, the consistent dismissals, and the festering stench from the old manufacturing plant. Aisha listened, furiously taking notes, her legal mind already connecting dots. Their initial investigations together hit familiar roadblocks. Requests for information were delayed. Crucial documents were misplaced. It was clear someone was actively obstructing their inquiries. But Aisha, resourceful and relentless, possessed a youthful vigor that perfectly complemented Esther Mae's deep wisdom. She leveraged university databases, pulled obscure public records, and used her legal aid network to access information unavailable to the average citizen. Their persistence paid off. Digging through archaic state archives, Aisha discovered faint references to an environmental impact assessment conducted on the manufacturing plant decades ago, shortly before it closed. This assessment, unlike subsequent superficial reports, was highly critical, warning of potential groundwater contamination. Yet, the full report itself was conspicuously missing from all modern databases. Aisha cross-referenced dates and names, uncovering the lead scientist on that original report, Dr. Evelyn Vance, a highly respected, now retired, environmental toxicologist. Dr. Vance had disappeared from public view after her report was filed, her work mysteriously unacknowledged. The official record showed she left the agency quietly, but Aisha's research revealed an abrupt, unexplained termination. Esther Mae felt a chill. They weren't just being dismissed. The truth had been deliberately buried. The fight wasn't just against neglect. It was against a powerful, hidden hand that reached back through time, silencing the truth for decades. Esther Mae's heart ached with the weight of the ghost report. It wasn't just Marcus's cough. It was decades of silent suffering, a community's slow poisoning. Aisha, a whirlwind of youthful energy and legal acumen, immediately tracked down Dr. Evelyn Vance, the brilliant toxicologist who had penned that suppressed report. Dr. Vance, now frail and living quietly in a retirement community far from the city, was initially wary. Years of being silenced, of seeing her scientific integrity crushed, had left deep scars. She spoke of the threats, the isolation, the quiet coercion that forced her into early retirement after she refused to recant her findings. But as Esther Mae spoke, her voice raspy with years of longing for justice, detailing the sick children, the wilting gardens, the deepening despair in Liberty Grove, Dr. Vance's eyes filled with tears. She saw not just a litigant, but a living testament to the very truth she had fought for. The shared pain, the shared history of being dismissed by a system, forged an immediate, powerful bond. Dr. Vance agreed to come forward, to validate the suppressed report, to testify. Dr. Vance's testimony, delivered in a secure, confidential setting to Aisha's legal team, was devastating. The suppression of her report wasn't a bureaucratic oversight. It was a direct order from the highest levels of a conglomerate named Omnicorp, the true owner of the abandoned plant. Omnicorp, through a web of shell companies, was actively engaged in a massive nationwide scheme, acquiring old, contaminated industrial sites cheaply, performing minimal, fraudulent cleanups, and then selling them for lucrative residential or commercial development, pocketing billions while leaving behind toxic legacies. The suppressed report on Liberty Grove was just one of many. Dr. Vance provided internal Omnicorp documents detailing their influence peddling. These documents, cross-referenced with Aisha's own research, exposed a direct, insidious conspiracy. City Councilman Miller, who had so casually dismissed Esther Mae, was revealed to be on Omnicorp's payroll through shell charities and consulting fees. He, along with Mayor Franklin Thorne, had actively blocked genuine environmental investigations, used their power to silence community complaints, and ensured that permits for Omnicorp's minimal cleanup efforts were fast-tracked. Their motive: massive campaign donations and promises of future political appointments from Omnicorp's vast network. The city's top officials were trading their citizens' health for power and profit. As Esther Mae and Aisha, now armed with an irrefutable mountain of evidence, prepared to file their federal lawsuit, Omnicorp and their political allies launched a vicious counterattack. The city initiated aggressive code enforcement against properties in Liberty Grove, threatening residents with eviction for minor violations. Councilman Miller publicly smeared Esther Mae, portraying her as a senile troublemaker influenced by an ambulance-chasing lawyer. Dr. Evelyn Vance received anonymous threats, reminding her of the trauma she had endured years ago. Mayor Thorne used his media connections to paint the lawsuit as a frivolous attempt to stifle economic growth. But Esther Mae, buoyed by Dr. Vance's courage and Aisha's fierce loyalty, stood firm. She organized town hall meetings in Liberty Grove, her voice, though soft, carrying the weight of her community's suffering and her own unyielding spirit. She brought forth elders whose wisdom validated her decades of observation, parents whose children suffered, and former city employees who quietly confirmed bits of the conspiracy. She became the living heart of the lawsuit, an embodiment of the justice denied. The stage was set for an epic David and Goliath battle that would expose decades of betrayal and fight for the very soul of a city. The battle for Liberty Grove was escalating into an all-out war. Omnicorp, a faceless titan of industry, and its political puppets, Mayor Franklin Thorne and City Councilman Miller, unleashed a relentless counteroffensive. They launched a vicious smear campaign against Esther Mae, attempting to paint her as a senile nuisance, driven by greed and misled by an ambulance-chasing lawyer. Anonymous threats whispered through Liberty Grove, targeting community leaders and families who had dared to speak out. City inspectors descended on homes, issuing citations for minor code violations, a clear intimidation tactic. They even hired private investigators to dig into Esther Mae's and Aisha's pasts, desperately seeking anything to discredit them. But Esther Mae, a woman forged in the crucible of injustice, was unbreakable. Each attack, rather than deterring her, fueled a deeper, quieter resolve. She walked the worn paths of Liberty Grove, holding open forums in her living room, her voice a beacon of hope. She compiled binders full of community testimonies, children's drawings of strange rashes, elders' accounts of unexplained fatigue, photographs of wilting gardens and barren patches where once life thrived. Her dignity, her unwavering spirit, became her most powerful weapon against their lies. Aisha, inspired by Esther Mae's courage, leveraged every legal and public relations tool available, pushing back against the smears, validating Esther Mae's claims through scientific and legal experts. As Omnicorp and the city officials continued their desperate attempts to bury the truth, Esther Mae and Aisha filed their comprehensive federal lawsuit. The case was massive, unprecedented, and faced immense pressure from corporate lobbyists and political operatives. Legal experts across the nation predicted it would be dismissed. But then a development sent shockwaves through the legal world. The case was assigned to Judge Eleanor Vance, a revered Black American federal judge known for her uncompromising integrity, sharp intellect, and a lifelong commitment to civil rights and environmental justice. Her very name commanded respect and signaled that this would be no ordinary trial. Judge Vance, after reviewing the initial filings and the compelling evidence of deliberate cover-up, issued a rare, expedited order for discovery and a protective order for all whistleblowers, sending a clear message. This court would tolerate no further obstruction. The battlefield had shifted to the highest court, and justice now had a formidable champion. As the trial date loomed and Judge Vance's court began to demand unredacted documents, Mayor Franklin Thorne, desperate and cornered, made a final, fatal mistake. He tried to force his chief of staff, a meticulous and ethical young woman named Camilla Hayes, to falsify financial records related to Omnicorp's campaign donations. Camilla, who had been quietly documenting the mayor's increasingly erratic and corrupt directives, felt her conscience snap. She was Mayor Thorne's daughter. Her father had always preached integrity, but his actions had become monstrous. She remembered Esther Mae Johnson, the quiet matriarch from Liberty Grove, a woman of deep moral courage. Risking everything, Camilla secretly contacted Aisha Sharma. She provided Aisha with undeniable, encrypted copies of Mayor Thorne's personal ledgers, showing direct, illegal kickbacks from Omnicorp and audio recordings of the mayor explicitly ordering the suppression of environmental reports and the implementation of delaying tactics to avoid cleanup. This final, devastating trove of evidence, delivered from within the mayor's own family, was the absolute, irrefutable proof that would bring down their entire corrupt enterprise. The stage was now set for the most dramatic environmental justice trial in a generation. The federal trial, Johnson v. Omnicorp et al., was a landmark case that captivated the nation. In a packed courtroom, Esther Mae Johnson, dignified and unwavering, stood as the living testament to decades of injustice. Aisha Sharma, a beacon of legal brilliance, systematically presented the overwhelming evidence. Dr. Evelyn Vance's irrefutable ghost report from decades prior, exposing the contamination. The meticulous financial ledgers and audio recordings provided by Camilla Hayes, detailing Mayor Franklin Thorne's and City Councilman Miller's illicit kickbacks from Omnicorp, and the devastating patient records confirming the widespread illnesses in Liberty Grove. The testimonies were searing. Dr. Evelyn Vance, frail but fierce, recounted the suppression of her scientific findings and the coercion she faced. Camilla Hayes, risking everything to testify against her own father, Mayor Thorne, provided a raw, emotional account of the cover-up from within City Hall. Esther Mae Johnson's testimony was the heart of the trial. Her voice, soft yet resonant with the weight of generations, described the creeping sickness, the dismissed pleas, and her unwavering hope for her great-grandson Marcus. The verdicts were absolute and resounding. Omnicorp, the powerful corporation, was found guilty on multiple counts of environmental negligence, fraud, and conspiracy, facing billions in fines and damages. Mayor Franklin Thorne and City Councilman Miller were convicted of racketeering, public corruption, and endangering the public, receiving lengthy federal prison sentences that ended their political careers in disgrace. But the justice extended far beyond individual convictions. The federal court mandated an unprecedented, comprehensive environmental cleanup of Liberty Grove, funded entirely by Omnicorp, ensuring every trace of contamination was removed. The ruling established new, stringent federal environmental protection laws, prioritizing public health over corporate profit, setting a nationwide precedent. The city and state governments, shamed by the revelations, implemented sweeping reforms. All secret campaign financing methods were abolished, replaced by transparent public funding laws. Independent oversight committees, with the power to investigate both corporate and political environmental violations, were established, with Dr. Evelyn Vance serving as a key advisor, finally able to realize her life's work. Liberty Grove, once a forgotten neighborhood, experienced a profound rebirth. The toxic land was remediated, transformed into vibrant green spaces, community gardens, and safe playgrounds. A state-of-the-art community health clinic, specializing in environmental illnesses, was built, named the Esther Mae Johnson Community Health Center. Children, including a thriving Marcus, now played freely, breathing clean air and drinking pure water, their laughter echoing a promise of a healthier future. Esther Mae Johnson, the matriarch who had been dismissed for years, became a national icon. She never sought fame or power, returning to her beloved garden, but her quiet courage ignited a movement. She became an honored guest at national environmental justice forums, her wisdom shaping new policies. Her story a beacon for every individual who felt unseen or unheard. Her victory proved that age is no barrier to justice, that a mother's unbreakable love can dismantle the most formidable walls of indifference, and that the long, hard fight for truth will ultimately prevail, bringing light to the darkest corners and justice to those who had waited for generations. For more gripping tales from the hidden corners of justice and beyond, subscribe to Dark Side of Luna, where the shadows hold the truth.